Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Walking with J.Beau, an almost daily walking vlog. Today we're going to do somewhere around 6 miles. If you're new to the blog, know ahead of time that I talk about whatever I talk about. It could range from growing up thinking we had 9 planets and they stole Pluto away from us, to politics, which a lot of people don't like discussing with other people, in the fear that they may disagree and not be able to be friends with them anymore. But I'll be happy to tell you that I do not hate other people, Americans, for their political views, but I do dislike the non-respect of other people for their political views. In other words, if Kamala Harris had won the election, I would have been disappointed, but I would not hate other people that voted for her. A lot of people right now seem to really not like Trump voters, which is unfortunate because it's the majority of the country. People can nitpick and argue about how big that majority is. In other words, how big Trump's penis is. I really could care less. The point is, despite what the media tells you, much of the world is very happy Trump got elected. Because while a lot of people are here in America in their bubble, being joyful warriors, the rest of the world is not doing so good. We're seeing censorship and oppression at levels we've never seen before in Europe. A lot of citizens are very worried, upset. They're financially strapped, worse than they have been in decades. And their media lies to them every day with no recourse. So, there are a lot of people who feel like they have no freedom at all. And we have war growing in Ukraine, bordering on World War III. And these people live in the region and they are worried about it, which is justifiable. So unlike yesterday's walk, where I didn't turn the camera around until we got to the end of the walk, I'm going to turn the camera around just up ahead here, once there's trucks out of the way. Big truck. I'll get past the truck. So, still a little windy today. Yesterday was very windy. It also feels a lot warmer today than it did yesterday because it's not as windy. So hey everybody, welcome to Walking with J.Beau. And yeah, I got a low-tech operation. I just have a GoPro attached to the end of a telescoping selfie stick. So certainly interesting times we're in. Might as well just start off the conversation today. And again, this is whatever's on my mind. There was somebody on the channel didn't like my walks, or at least the walk they watched, and basically was saying I'm not a very nice person, and that they weren't going to watch my channel. Don't know where that came from. All I can guess is you hate Trump and I don't, so now you hate me. So it's actually better that you don't watch my channel. So I guess that clears that up. The other one is a new channel that I'm following. Seems like a nice fella. Forget the username right now while I'm walking, but he had a new 1911 that was having feed issues. He was using 230 grain ball ammo, a brand new 1911, first shots he took with it. Now, he said it's the first 1911 he ever owns and shoots. He seems to be kind of new to firearms, sort of. He's really good with a shotgun. But I've had time to think about it. Typically, when you have a failure to feed and the slide won't close to pick up a round, typically it's a magazine issue or some other issue that is slowing the slide down. So, full metal jacket ball ammo, 230 grain, in a traditional government 70s series, I believe is the was. Might have been an 80, it doesn't matter. The 80 would actually run better, because one version of 1911, the ramp is attached to the frame when you take the slide off, and you have the frame, the ramp is on the frame. On another series, the ramp will be attached to the barrel, like modern firearms are. So those are two important differences, because the ramp that's attached to the frame typically was designed for 230 grain ball ammo, and the ramp that is attached to the barrel typically favors maybe a lighter grain bullet with a little more pop, defensive type ammo, that sort of thing, hollow points. They didn't use all that fancy stuff back in the day. So that could be the issue, but I doubt it. I thought at first maybe when he was shooting, he was riding the slide with his left hand, which a lot of times you can actually pop up the slide lock by accident while you're shooting, and it locks the slide back, because that's what was happening there. The slide was locking back. He says that it was not because of him riding the slide. I would tend to not believe that. No disrespect to him. And he also said it could be the magazine. I doubt it. I've never heard of that. Hi. So, he never mentioned if he tried other magazines. I think he did, and it did it on all of them, so it's not the magazine. The main issue he seemed to have, besides the slide locking open, which I still say was him riding the slide, the slide lock button. He says it's not, but it's his first 1911, and he's not used to it. He says he's not doing that, but I think he's doing that. That's just my opinion. Now, the failure to pick up a round when the slide's coming back and the round is kind of jamming against the ramp, that's probably a new magazine issue. So I think he was having a combination of different things. But I think the main culprit is one that people that buy firearms never look at. They buy a gun, they expect it to run right out of the box, without having done anything to it. You got to take the firearm apart, clean it, and lube it. Always. That firearm could have been sitting in the box for a year. Gravity pulls the lubrication out of the tracks, and he's running a dry slide. It's amazing to me how many people buy a new firearm and they don't clean it before shooting it. There's also a lot of people that buy a new firearm and they don't even check to see if it's loaded. Now you might be thinking, why would a firearm be loaded in the box? Well, it's happened before. They do test fire these when they make them. Sometimes employees will have a liquid lunch, or they'll go smoke a fatty on their lunch break, or they'll just simply be in a hurry to go to lunch break, or it may be Friday and they're excited about the weekend and they just make a mistake. A lot of firearms come with a chamber flag inserted in there to let you know it's not loaded. So anyway, just mentioning that. So basically, I think this guy was riding the slide lock when he was shooting, because there's really no reason for the slide to lock back like that on all the magazines he tried in it, which looks like 3 different ones. So anyway, just my opinion on that. I like to use good magazines. Wilson Combat are awesome, reliable. They work in all 1911s flawlessly, and they're only about 20 bucks for the blued ones. You can get them for $19.99 with free shipping. So anyway, I don't know if he's going to make a follow-up video. I left a comment for him, and I just say, well, let me know what you figure out. I don't want to go on there and tell him all this stuff, make it sound like he doesn't know what he's doing, because he obviously knows some. But basically, we've done like so many firearms that, you know, we've been there, done that already. And process of elimination, it's almost always user error of some kind. Almost. So the slide not picking a round up on the way back, it even sounded stiff when he was racking around in it. It looked like it was being sluggish when he was shooting. And if the firearm is not properly lubed, it limits its functionality. That slide has to move back and forth freely without any resistance, or very little. It should be relying on the recoil spring, and that's it. And you've heard me say it on my channel many times. There's no such thing as over-lubing a 1911. I like to shoot mine where you shoot a couple of times and there's oil slopping out the back. That's good. Now, don't spray oil in the chamber where the round goes. That's not what I'm talking about. That does absolutely nothing to lubricate your firearm. All you're doing is you're putting junk in chamber that's going to burn, cause a film, and it's going to cause your shell casings to start getting stuck in chamber and having issues like that, eject problems. Because that's the same kind of thing that used to happen with lacquer-coated military ammunition for waterproofing. Russian ammo, which is steel case and expands in the chamber to begin with, the coating would start cooking off, and it would clog up the around inside the chamber with the round chambers. And then the shell casing will get stuck. Burnt oil does the same thing. You end up dirtying your firearm a lot quicker than it would have been otherwise. So I know you might think, well, this gun isn't running right at the range, I'm just going to spray some oil in there. That really doesn't do anything, except give you more problems. Now, if you can reach the tracks that go by while spraying in the chamber, the real issue is the lubrication. Your slide is dragging, which you'll get the same thing with cheap ammo that doesn't have much pop. Doesn't really have enough power to kick the slide back hard enough to pick up a round. So that can also cause issues. So it's very important to do what you're supposed to do with your firearm. It's not a hammer, you know. You gotta give it some care. And lubrication with firearms is necessary. Now, we had a guy stop by the range. He was going by as one of the people that related to the person that owns the property we shoot at. He stopped by. He had an old Stevens shotgun, and I felt really bad because this shotgun should have a better owner. Let's just put it that way. He was probably unintentionally abusing the shotgun. It didn't have a lick of oil, nothing. It was bone dry, it was all pitted, it had visible orange rust on everything. He just leaves it in his truck with a few rounds, probably for defense. And could barely rack it. It was so stiff, I had to pull on it with both hands to rack it. So it took some spray lube, sprayed down the bolt, which is what I just said you shouldn't do. But in this case, it was absolutely necessary. He doesn't know how to take it apart to clean it, so it's never been cleaned. It's like a 1960s Stevens shotgun. So I sprayed it down with oil, sprayed underneath the corn cob, and then the thing started to slick up and run like it was supposed to. He was happy about that, and basically told him, though, you know, all that rust on there and that pitting, it's not going to come out. You can get rid of the rust. I told him you should use a copper penny. If you take you can use one of the modern ones that's copper coated, but the old pennies that are all solid copper work the best, and you just rub the penny on all the pitting and rust on a firearm, and it'll remove everything it can remove, will come off. So told him he should do that. So anyway, on to another topic. Something else I saw that was cool today was a young girl, probably about 20, 18 maybe even 16 or 17, I really didn't know. Pretty young girl, good shape, obviously a good family that has money, and she was shopping for violins. And she went to a kind of like not really a clearinghouse, but a high-end people that deal in musical instruments, vintage ones. And so she was shopping for a violin. And if you know anything about violins and vintage ones, they can cost anywhere from thousands to millions of dollars. So anyway, she was presented with an original Stradivarius violin, the coveted, highly collectible, worth millions. There's only about 600 in existence, and Very similar story to the Gibson Les Paul in the 58, 59, and 1960, where only about 1,600 to 2,000, somewhere in that group, were made. Some of them are, nobody knows where they are. They could be destroyed. They could be sitting in someone's garage or closet. Some family person might have one, not know they have one. Which did happen with a 58 Flying V. Some older woman had one that a relative had acquired. And that's probably the rarest Gibson besides the Explorer from 58. Carina Flying V. That today is worth anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. And she had one. And she was given a fair price for that. She was actually asking for a lot less money. She had no idea it was worth that much. Needless to say, she was floored when she found out that she had something worth $500,000. But anyway, we'll get on to the Stradivarius, where I was talking about to begin with. This young girl is a protege, gifted. She picked up that Stradivarius. She looked at it in awe, but she was also young. She understood it was old from the 1600s, but perhaps didn't understand fully, probably till later in life, the true value of the experience she was having. That's okay. Most people don't get to even play one or look at one in person, as is the case with the 58, 59, and 1960 Gibson Les Paul guitars. So anyway, she was playing that. She was doing these legato kind of runs. And, she was so gifted. And that thing was singing sweet. It sounded really good. She ended up buying a violin in her price range from the 1800s. She didn't say what it cost. But she was going to be renting it, which is what they do. Typically, these fine instruments are rented to people because it's actually cheaper to buy the expensive insurance to insure it while it's in your possession, which you have to do. And then you have to return it later or buy it. So there are very famous violinists who play real Stradivarius violins, and they don't own them because they're too expensive. Some of them are literally worth millions. Millions for a violin. It's, you know, but they're made to be played. And when somebody is a professional and they're gifted, you know, the instrument wants to be played, so it should be. Granted, it's expensive insurance, I'm sure. I don't know what the insurance sells for, but as far as the 58, 59, and 60 Gibson Les Pauls, I'll never be able to afford one. So I got the next best thing. I have a 1958 reissue made by Gibson to the specs that were used in 58, right down to the plastics and the glues that were used. Modern day guitars use like tight bond, kind of a chemical glue. My guitar is put together with hide glue made from animal hide, like Gibson used to do it in the 50s. And the plastics on my guitar are replicated from the 50s technology plastics, which is unfortunate because it is inferior plastic. But if you want an original, what happens over a period of 50, 60 years is the plastic will shrink and crack. It's more of a biodegradable plastic, let's put it that way. The tuning key knobs will actually break and crumble off after 60, 70 years. But I'm not going to own this long enough for that to do that. But I did get a replica, and they are expensive. The one I got sold for just under $7,000. And I love playing guitar, and that was important to me. picked out the one I wanted, and when I got it, it was slightly aged intentionally in the Gibson custom shop, which is not the same as their regular production. It's actually in its own factory. It's a custom guitar shop, kind of a high-end, trendy thing. And so, well, found 2 cigarette lighters today. Told you I'm getting a collection of Bic lighters. I find a lot of those things. I'll cross back over now. And, so anyway, it's a beautiful guitar, Sunrise T-Burst. I've not made a video for it yet on my channel, and you know, I'm asking myself why I haven't done that. I play guitar quite often. I'm absolutely in love with this guitar, and so, well, maybe I should make a video. I'm not a bad guitar player. I've been playing a long time, since my teens, and you're bound to get at least half decent at something if you do anything for that long. Even by accident, you should get some kind of improvement. So maybe I'll whip it out and play something. A lot of times I play my own stuff. I'm not really good on cover tunes, and what I mean by good at it is that playing the songs isn't the problem. It just doesn't hold my attention. It's just something I've always been. I just always play my own stuff. And so the most common thing that happens is people will say, play Radar Love, or play this song by Bad Company, or play this Led Zeppelin song. Yeah, I can play those. I've learned most of those riffs, but it doesn't hold my interest. It's kind of like if you were going to write a book. Are you going to sit there and copy something written by something else and then show it to somebody else? And no, it's not your own stuff. It's that kind of thinking. You know what I mean? So, anyway, vinyl records. I've been absolutely passionate about vinyl records for a very long time. Many years, since I was young. Really got into it a lot more in the early 2000s. And I have a lot of them. I got quite a few thousand. I don't know how many I have. I've never really counted them, but I stopped counting them at around 6,000, so obviously there's more than that. But what I should do is go through my collection and weed out the ones that I'm just never gonna play. I mean, you know, Joan Baez, God bless her, but it's nice to have her records, but I can't even remember the last time I played one, or whether or not I would ever take one out to play again. Buffy St. Marie is another one. So, you know, they're taking up space in the collection. I should get rid of them. But anyway, neither here nor there. It's something I do care about, and if you are going to get into that, you don't need a whole ton of audiophile equipment. You really don't. A lot of people think you have to go buy an expensive turntable, you have to go buy an expensive quote-unquote needle, which is not a needle. It's actually a stylus, which is a precious stone, usually diamond. A lot of times they use industrial diamond. Some use topaz, opal. There's all kinds of different options. Basically, what's important is the cartridge and the cantilever, which is the arm that vibrates back and forth through the grooves with your diamond attached to the end of it, which people call a needle. You have different needle types. You have conical, elliptical, My preference is elliptical or semi-elliptical, but a good conical is also good. And a conical one is just comes down like this, like a cone, and it's perfectly universal like a cone. Elliptical has a kind of a trimmed side with a point, and it rides the groove more precisely, picks up a little bit more information from the info that's in the snake-shaped grooves of a record. And so there's somebody with a nail gun going happy in there, doing some home improvements. So anyway, you know, as far as the turntable goes, they have good options. I would recommend not getting anything under $250, though you would be tempted. Maybe if you're going to start out and you're not sure if you're even going to like it, then maybe get an Audio-Technica LP60 at Walmart, a couple hundred, 180, something like that. But I would definitely recommend a little higher end, higher grade. When they first started reissuing turntables, the vinyl craze had started up, and all of these companies had to learn how to do things over again. And they have it down now, but turntables before 2012, kind of iffy. Mine's a 2013. I've been using it since 2013. I use it almost daily. It's been wonderful, reliable, works great. It is an Audio-Technica LP AT-LP 1240 dash USB. What does that mean? Well, that means I can plug it with a USB into a computer and play records and use audio software to record directly from what I'm playing. To have digital music online, which I have zero interest in doing at all. I don't like how digital music sounds. I've had this discussion before on here. The digital music, it also depends how it is compressed or it's not compressed. Sometimes there is digital music that's not been compressed. That sounds really good. And old CDs, when they first came out, was kind of a new technology. A lot of them sound to me like lower bit rate MP3s, so you can hear the on hi-hats. Sounds kind of lispy. Got a little bit of sizzle on there. It's compressed. Also, a lot of the old CDs are getting what's called CD rot, where if you have any vintage CDs without any printing on it, a lot of times we had those ones that would just have the band name with the track listing, and you could see all the kind of like CD foil that's in the CD. If you hold it up to a light, you can actually see little pinholes in it over time. That's called CD rot. Now, a lot of the CDs that were screen printed with some kind of band logo or design or graphic, most of those are fine. It's the original first ones. All my original Metallica ones I bought when they came out in the 80s. CDs first started showing up around here. I actually bought And Justice for All on the day of its official release. And I remember walking all the way to Stradivarius in Auburn to buy it from Lewiston, which when I was younger, walking 6 to 8 miles was no big deal. So did that. bought that, got it home, and I remember it was sold in one of those original cardboard holders with the CD inside, the cardboard covering. Was kind of an anti-theft device. Make it bigger and more difficult to steal, basically, is why they did that. And I remember the night I bought that, there was a huge building downtown that burned. So I actually stopped and watched the fire on the way home. So it was an interesting evening. Fitting, I guess, for a new Metallica release. And of course the album was awesome, but the point is, these days, you know, that CD I bought has CD rot going on it. It's not affecting the play of it, but it will eventually. And so in that regard, vinyl records actually do last longer. But you can wear out a vinyl record. Most of the vinyl records that have worn out, if you buy it and it sounds flat and it's worn, it typically comes from a less expensive turntable not adjusted properly. So you have to learn how to adjust your turntable, the down weight tracking force of the needle and the centrifugal anti-skate, it's called. Because when you put the needle in there and it's spinning in a circle, it wants to be thrown off the record. So you have to set the counterweight to find the sweet spot where it's always going to want to sit in the groove without forcing itself with centrifugal. And I use a very simple test for that. There are some old 1970s vinyl records, singles, maxi singles, extended 12-inch singles, which are extended play. So you can have like a 20-minute dance club version of a hit song, because discotheques used to play those and people would dance. And so anyway, where am I getting with this? Well, some of the 1970s disco records, especially issued by Casablanca, which was the label that had Kiss and many disco artists, would issue these singles for clubs, and they would be one-sided. So you would have a plain side of a record with no grooves at all. Those are perfect for setting anti-skate, because you put that on there with the flat grooveless side, and you put the needle on there and you just play it. Put it down in the middle somewhere, and you watch it try to throw it off the record, which it will. So you have to watch it. But you can manually adjust the anti-skate while it's on the record, and you can actually spin that and cause the needle to go back and forth. So you find your spot that's going to be basically a little bit past the middle, towards the inner part of the label, which is the tightest diameter, which is usually where most of the wear that happens on worn out records. A lot of people that have played those records with the turntable not adjusted properly, or a dull stylus, which is worn, will actually start chewing up the grooves and ruining the record prematurely. A record with a turntable set up properly should last longer than you are alive, even if you play it a lot. So it's really important to have good equipment as far as having a new needle. It doesn't have to be an expensive needle, but it does have to be set up properly. So think of it as shooting a firearm that you never lubricate. You're going to ruin your firearm. It's the same thing with adjusting and maintaining your turntable properly. And that goes for the downforce tracking weight of the needle also. If you don't set that heavy enough, the needle will actually pop out of the grooves and skip. So a lot of people think that they have records that skip, and they probably don't. They just haven't adjusted their turntable properly. So there's a lot of different things to learn. A great website called Vinyl Engine, the Vinyl Engine. Just do a search for that. They've been around for years. They got all the protractor tools you could need on that to adjust all these things. Instructions, learn a lot. So anyway, a lot of times when you're buying used records, I will pull it out of the sleeve and visually inspect it, looking for the obvious, like scratches. Not all scratches are bad. Surface scratches don't really make noise that much, and but you should always try to find one with the least amount of damage. But one thing I look for in particular is you'll have a record that looks great, no scratches, looks awesome, but then you'll notice a discoloration on the last track. When vinyl starts to get chewed up by a dull needle or a turntable not adjusted properly, it will start chewing up one sidewall of a groove because it's trying to throw the needle off the record. So it's constantly putting pressure on that groove wall that it's like a V. So one side of it will get chewed up and start making distortion, and the other side will still sound pretty good. So what you hear is a half decent sound with crackling distortion, like your levels are too high or something. And you could physically see a gray color in those grooves when you see that. So that's something to look for when you buy used records. That's why I like used record shops nowadays. A lot of times they'll have a turntable in the store. You can try it out before you buy it. So I mean, you're not going to sit there and listen to the whole thing in the store, and the guy in the store will have it set up properly. It's amazing how many people beep at you when you're walking with a camera. They want to be a superstar on whatever I'm doing, I guess. But anyway, that's my discussion on vinyl records, which I do love, and I do have about 5 vinyl record videos. I stopped making them. Not sure why. There's a lot of people that love vinyl now. It probably would get a lot more views than my gun videos do. So I need to think about doing that. So, I guess that's all I wanted to say about that stuff. So a lot of times I do talk about politics in my walks. We had the election. It's pretty much all I talked about on my walks. Now Trump has won the election. You know, probably not going to focus on it as much. But it looks like Jack Smith did file a motion today to dismiss the election interference case he had in DC, and the other case that he has for insurrection, which is ridiculous. And that is also going to be dropped. I mean the classified documents one. So those cases are going away. So lawfare loses, thankfully, and you know, it's really a terrible thing what they did. It's inexcusable. You know, whether you like Trump or not, it's just, we can't be doing that. It was very, very obviously politically biased, and the majority of the country that voted for him knows that. That's why they voted for him. So you can sit there and say, well, you know, you voted for Trump, you're just supporting Trump, he's a criminal. Well, I really don't believe that, because I see what they did. It was wrong. You know, it was wrong. Wouldn't care if they did this to a Democrat. It's not who we are as a country, and the judicial branch is our third branch of government. And to have them coordinate and abuse their power, can't have that. And if they did anything dishonest, improper, and broke the law in doing so, they should be prosecuted for it. So, you know, the party of nobody is above the law shouldn't have a problem with that, should you? Right? Isn't that the excuse we were given? Nobody's above the law. Well, we'll see. Because from what I've seen, Democrats, when they do get prosecuted, they get lenient sentences. Their life isn't ruined. And when it's the other way around, it's a huge pile-on. They lose their careers, their job, their retirements. They lose their house because they had to pay for a lawyer. They lose everything. Then they go into court and, you know, if they're not convicted of something, found innocent, whatever, they're still broke. That is what lawfare is for. The lawfare in the case against Trump wasn't to get somebody who thinks he's above the law. It was to keep him off the campaign trail and in a courtroom, and to debank him, make him bankrupt. And I'm sure they were quite surprised after he was charged that he raised a record number of money, because people saw right through this. And in fact, some billionaire gave him $100 million. Another one gave him $50 million. And because people saw what they were doing, and it was wrong. You know, and it's a free country. You can disagree with me on that. That's fine, but history is not going to shine lightly on this, or kindly on this. What they did was horrible. So, no single man, whether Trump was guilty or not, okay, no single man is above our Constitution and our systems of justice to ever allow it to be abused like that. So what I'm saying is that even if Trump was guilty of something, they abused the system to get him. When you have district attorneys and prosecutors in New York actually campaigning on, I am going to be the one that gets Trump, and then she's the one that brings these charges, and then they have to, you know, she wanted to take all the Trump's properties, Trump Tower, and that was clearly election interference, and the American people got pissed off at that, as they should. You know, misdemeanor business offenses, okay? Misdemeanor business offenses stitched together only in the state of New York to make felonies. It's bullshit. It's, you know, you can't have that. Can't have that. Those people need to lose their job, and like I said, if they did anything improper and illegal, withheld evidence, things like that, they should be charged. Because nobody's above the law, right? So, all I know is the Constitution is not worth shredding over one single person. Not ever, and that should never be condoned. And if you're one of those people that believe Trump is an orange Hitler, well, Joe Biden invited him right in the White House, sat down, had drinks with him, laughing, joking. If that isn't the big middle finger to you and wake-up call for you to understand how much you've been played like a sucker, I don't know what is. So, anyway, that's just my opinion. I have one. It's my walking vlog. It's a vlog. You don't have to like what I talk about, and you don't have to watch it. So, if you do, that's great. Now, when Trump does something I don't like, I'll talk about it. I don't like his Surgeon General pick. Don't like his Surgeon General pick. She was pro-censorship during the pandemic, pro-vaccine, pro-lockdown, pro-masking, pro-everything that had to do with it. I do not like his pick. I do like his NIH pick, though. And I'm also not quite keen on Dr. Oz yet. I need to hear more. Never really been a huge fan of him. I think Trump's pick for him is more of a loyalty reward, which I really hate saying that about Trump, but basically Trump can't trust anybody because you let in a wolf in sheep's clothing. Could end up ruining your presidency by leaking to the media all the time. And he had that the first time. And all of these people have this gotta get Trump mentality, that to the point where he can't even trust FBI background checks on his appointees because the FBI is dishonest. They've been poisoned with bias. We've seen it. So there's no reason for a Republican like Roger Stone to have a full army of people in fully automatic weapons with body armor, tack gear, night vision, concussion grenades to go arrest an old man on something that's not even a violent charge he was charged with. That was all for show. That was politics. And the FBI did that. So you can't sit there and say they don't do that. They do. Because when Democrats get raided, that doesn't happen. Usually, their lawyer will be contacted and say your client's being placed under arrest. At your convenience, turn yourself into the local, you know, completely different. And it doesn't help that CNN just happened to be in the neighborhood when Roger Stone got raided, so they could record it on video. So there's obviously dishonesty there, leaking to the press, and it's a political setup. So when you sit there and say, how can you vote for somebody like Trump? Well, you don't know all of those stories because you watch the media. They don't talk about it. Another one was James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, investigative undercover reporter. The media goes out of their way to discredit him to satisfy Media Matters and other far-left globalist funded billionaire anti-conservative groups, what they are. And it's all about defamation, discrediting reporters like Tucker Carlson and everybody else. And so anyway, James O'Keefe, somebody had turned over Ashley Biden's diary, which somebody turns that over to a press person. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. If it had been somebody from the New York Times or Washington Post, nothing would have been done about it. The person who gave it to him could be charged for stealing it, but not the reporter it was given to. Okay, that's the important distinction. But they went to a FISA court, got a FISA warrant to go break into James O'Keefe's house or apartment he was in and raid it, seize all electronic devices and everything in it over the Ashley Biden diary, which they did. And James O'Keefe successfully sued to get his devices back, and the warrant was warrantless, shouldn't have been done. And it was done for the intention of having nothing to do with Ashley Biden's diary. The FISA court was lied to by the FBI and DOJ to get a warrant, using the Ashley Biden diary as an excuse, creating enough probable cause, along with the media saying James O'Keefe is not a legitimate journalist because he doesn't belong to their union, which is a joke. I can be a journalist, so can you. Free press in this country, you know? So anyway, Turns out all they wanted was the information on his electronic devices. They wanted to know who was leaking from the DOJ and FBI to the media, to James O'Keefe. So they wanted all the contacts he had on his phone. And whatever information was on it, phone calls that he made or received, and that was the sole purpose of it. So they went through all of that just to find out who was leaking. So that is how dirty and dishonest the FBI and DOJ is. And that's another reason why I voted for Trump. Because they did it to him. They illegally surveilled him in 2016. They spied on his campaign. And that was proven. Peter Strzok and his woman he was sleeping with, that he worked with, who were cheating on their people they were with, by the way, coordinated along with other people that never got charged or prosecuted. And that's why I'm really happy Trump nominated Pam Bondi, because if there's any legit crimes there, she will sniff it out and these people will get prosecuted finally. Because until people go to jail, it's not going to stop. They'll just wait till Trump's out of office and they'll go right back to doing it worse than they did before. So that's the truth of that. Don't know if you agree with me or not. That's okay if you don't. We are in some potentially good times coming up. I'm cleaning a lot of this up. Draining the swamp is not going to be easy because the swamp fights back, as we saw what they did to Trump. And don't know if you ever caught Chuck Schumer talking with Rachel Madcow on MSNBC, but he was saying, I really have no idea why Trump's going out of his way to make enemies in our government. He said their CIA and intel agencies and what have you have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you. So here we go with a sitting Senate at the time, minority leader, saying that Trump, by doing what he's doing, is going to have the deep state, which they deny exists, go after him. I mean, he said it right there on video, that if you don't shut up, you're going to anger people that were never elected, that run this government, and they're going to go after you. What does that tell you? That Chuck Schumer can't even distinguish that that's wrong, and that's just the way it is. Well, it's not the way it is. It's unacceptable. So, another report I just saw recently, off to a different subject, almost 50%, I wish I was making it up and I wish it wasn't true, but it's looking like about 50% of the aid that we sent to Ukraine has been laundered. Now, before it was labeled as a conspiracy theory, but now whistleblowers are coming out saying, because Trump won, okay, they're coming out saying that 50% of the money we sent to Ukraine got laundered. A lot of it came right back to Democrats. So that is still a developing story. We'll see what happens with it. So leakers did come out and say that, and they have documentation, supposedly proof. So I'm going to wait until I hear more on that. But if that's the case, which Democrats profited from it is what I want to know. And I still would like answers to things like from 2022, where a mayor in Ukraine taking off to Germany checked things in through customs, She had $1 million, over $1 million in cash, in euros, and she had assets of $23 million she transferred to a German bank while she left the Ukraine for Germany, and it was all in US money. So, until people explain things like that to me, where a mayor or regional governor in Ukraine gets that much American money and they don't own a business, you tell me what's going on. That's our money. That was in 2022. Now it looks like the billions of dollars we sent there, half of it has been laundered, stolen, pillaged, taken advantage of, whatever you want to call it. Because the Biden administration is weak. And, you know, I'd like to say, you know, Biden's laundering money. And no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he doesn't know what the hell's going on with his administration. He's not running anything. He's not mentally competent enough to do it. And the administration is doing that. And they're just basically not checking on it. They're not keeping track of it. So, you know, I'm not making that up. Leakers have come out and said it. So I hope that gets added to the pile of people that are going to get prosecuted. We have a really good chance to clean things up. And the greatest moment I'm going to have is when these people are prosecuted and there's irrefutable evidence in court and they are found guilty. The media is going to try to say it was a witch trial, it's this, that, or the other thing, but the evidence is going to show otherwise. Unlike the Trump prosecutions, where the evidence was so weak and you had to have a crooked judge rig what the jury knew by omitting exculpatory evidence. So, you know, exculpatory evidence is like, let's say somebody gets tried for murder and somebody before the murder was committed has a letter or audio recording you sent to them saying something like, I'm really worried they're going to try to pin a murder on me or something by having my wife killed. I mean, I need your help. Do you have any advice? What can I do? Now, somebody could set up a phone call like that knowing they were going to kill their wife, or it could actually be actual evidence based on the person who submitted it. So, there were similar instances in Trump's trial in New York where the person that submitted that was a valid person, an actual accountant, and somebody else that was actually a federal election commission campaign expert, and their testimony was refused, and the judge had the attitude of, I know what the law is, thank you very much, we don't need you. And he actually is not an expert in campaign law. So there was exculpatory evidence that a judge could say isn't allowed or is admissible. And the judge gets to choose. A judge that openly hates Trump, is biased towards Trump, and was actually displaying actual anger in the courtroom, banging on his desk. So, and they also didn't televise it, which I wish they would have, because then people would have seen how much of a sham that was. Most people consume media propaganda. They go through the court documents and then pick out the things that make Trump look the worst. And they don't talk about anything that makes him look good. And then you, angry at me because I'm talking about this and supporting Trump, you don't even have half the information. You have the information that was given to you, framed in a way that it is solid, and you feel like you have all the information, but trust me, you don't. You need to go read the court docs yourself. And then you'll find out simple things like E. Jean Carroll, the judge said she was not raped. Doesn't stop the media from saying it. But anyway, apparently the public didn't believe. Right now, it's very apparent that the public does not trust the FBI, DOJ, our government agencies. They don't trust the authorities. They don't trust the FDA, CDC. They don't trust anybody. And they voted for Trump because they don't believe the story they were told. So that's really good. If anything from the election, that was it. And yeah, people being broke, needing money, and that's a big part of it. But I'm telling you right now, if Trump were guilty of all these things they charged him with, I wouldn't have voted for him. I don't want to vote for a criminal. So I just don't believe it on its face because I know how dishonest these people are. And apparently, millions of other Americans do as well. The media is in the toilet with the public. And speaking of that, it looks like MSNBC is all done, almost. They're shoveling dirt in their face and they just refuse to believe they're dead yet. But don't be surprised if Elon Musk does buy MSNBC. Might actually turn it into a real news network, which would be awesome because you would have all of this real news. People would have real news for a change. And the other networks would end up doing like they did with Fox News, because Fox News was a competitor. So the rest of the media went out of their way to defame Fox News. You can see that in arguments on the internet with people. You tell them, yeah, I saw this in the news about whatever. Then they'll say, let me guess, from Fox News, and they'll spell Fox like faux, F-A-U-X, like it's fake news. So these people are well conditioned by the media propaganda. They don't think for themselves. So that is kind of a tragedy, but it is what it is, right? So in other words, if they have the Elon Musk buying MSNBC, we would end up having a real news network that the other competitors are going to trash and say that it's fake news and conspiracy theory news network, which they're already saying that in anticipation of that possibly happening. But I listened to the conspiracy theorists during the pandemic, and I came out on the right side of history. So whenever you have corporate media saying something's a conspiracy, what that is an alternate version of maybe something you should be listening to at least make your own decision on whether it's garbage or not. Problem is the mainstream media, legacy media, they think you and I are too stupid to get information and decide if it's real or not. So they feel like they need to be the gatekeepers and filter the news that we get because they know best for us. And I can't even believe people ascribe to that and would accept that. They're calling you stupid to your face. You're not smart enough to determine what the truth is on your own. In other words, you're not smart enough to listen to conspiracy theory and see it as conspiracy theory and then make a decision that you're not going to trust or believe it on your own. They have to do it for you. That's an insult. Insult my intelligence. If you were with me on these walks, I told you many times that Trump was going to win the election. I was hoping he would win it by a lot. I thought a couple of the battleground states would be close, but I thought he would, what I wanted to watch was what he did in Michigan, because Michigan, to me, seemed like the closest state or easiest state for Kamala to win. Turns out that wasn't the case. As it stands right now, according to the AP, Trump won Michigan by 80,000 votes, which is a big, huge win, despite the media trying to say he barely won Michigan. These people are just incredulous. They're just unbelievable. Absolutely can never glorify anything Trump's done or humanize him, ever. And they don't understand why that's a mental illness. So, it turns out actually the closest state was actually Wisconsin. Wisconsin was the closest one. Around 1%, a little bit less than or something, which is about what Biden won it by in 2020. So the other controversy I have is the election's been over for 19 days, and they are still counting votes. It's blatantly obvious to me that we need election reform in this country. I mean, you have countries with, you know, millions and millions of people. They counted all the votes in a night. People knew who won. And there's one county in particular in Southern California. There were only 25,000 votes cast. 25,000, that's it. They have counted 60% of those. There's still 40% uncounted. 19 days later, still, they have not counted all the votes. Now, why are they doing that? Well, they use ballot harvesting there, and they use, you know, basically they're going to use these votes for something nefarious. Hey, baby. So, there's really no excuse for it, I guess is what I'm saying. To be 19 days out of an election with only 25,000 ballots, and they're still counting. That is absolutely ridiculous. So stuff needs to be fixed with that. I hope Congress does that. Congress needs to pass election reform, and it needs to be passed in the Senate for Trump to sign it into law. And like I've said before on this walk, I don't want federalized elections. But we need rules nationwide that apply to everybody. Then they can go ahead and run their own elections. Paper ballots would be a good start. Watermarked, as it's called, digitally. Very difficult to counterfeit. You can't just run them off any old printer. And but you would have to have oversight for the companies that actually print the ballots. I actually read a couple of stories on that. The companies that print the ballots, there's not really anything in place to prevent them from running off ballots, and they're not safeguarded. They obviously need more ballots just in case, you know, something happens where a shipment of ballots gets destroyed in a fire or something. So there's always a ton of extra ballots that are never used. You know, who watches those? You know? So the story I saw was nobody knows if those ballots ever get used for bad purposes. Nobody tracks them. Right? Nobody tracks them to see what happens to them. Like, what do they do with them after the election? So there's a lot of things that need to be done. And we all saw what somebody winning an election can do to the rest of the world. Joe Biden has been an absolute friggin' disaster. Even worse than I thought he could be. And I'm sure we're going to hear about stuff after he's out of office. So I don't think any of these people, the good news is, and this is good news, is I don't think any of these people expected Trump to win. They thought they had it in the bag. He's not going to get, he's a convicted felon. He's a rapist. He's this, he's that. Well, guess what? The United States citizen just gave the government the biggest fucking middle finger I've ever seen. And that's what they did. That's what I did. And I'm sure that's what you did too if you're still watching. We got some people in this country that have no idea how corrupt this country is. And really, quite honestly, I don't know how they can't see it. I mean, the media is pretty good at running propaganda, but people like me have gotten to the point now where as soon as they start talking propaganda, it's noticeable right away. When a media company tells you how you should feel about something, that is propaganda. That is getting ready to set the narrative with you. Trump got accused of this today, and you should be outraged at that. And you should be upset that anybody voted for him. But this is what they did. So when you hear stuff like that, that is automatically a non-trustworthy news site. For mainstream legacy media. Fox News doesn't do that. Now, they'll have a show with Gutfeld and they'll have their side shows. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual anchor talking about the news. Brett Baer, I don't really like him sometimes, but I will say that he does his job the way you're supposed to. There used to be people on NBC that did that. Brian Williams just actually came out basically denouncing the media now that he's retired and he's doing his own podcasting thing. Now he's coming out of the closet talking about how biased the media is and how crooked and dishonest they are. And he was doing it. Rachel Maddow was getting paid $40 million a year. She had to take a $10 million pay cut, so now she's only getting paid $30 million. And she does 1 hour a week. Talk about a nice payday. So anyway, MSNBC was getting most of their money from their affiliate NBC, and NBC is cutting ties with MSNBC from what I read, and MSNBC is going to go under. They're not going to be able to afford Rachel Maddow, Joe Scarborough, and Mika, the propagandists. So they're finished. As soon as NBC makes that official, and they're not going to be able to refuse the money offered from Elon Musk, because their attorneys are going to say, well, you'd better take this because this is, you know, probably the best deal you're going to get. So that would be awesome. Have MSNBC purchased by Elon Musk, rebranded as real news you can trust, and basically the competition would then be between Fox News and Elon Musk's channel, and I think Elon Musk will be even bigger than Fox News, and it'll be honest news that you can trust. First Amendment. Elon Musk really believes in that. So, right. So I think that'll be a really interesting development for everybody. And basically, these other networks that compete with Fox News, mainly when I'm talking about CNN, MSNBC, you know, they would come on there and they're always defaming the other network, Fox News. Well, Fox News is beating them in ratings. And Elon Musk channel is going to be competing with Fox News. They're not going to be competing with CNN. So CNN's finished too. They're just a lot bigger with a lot more money and resources. And they'll probably be able to survive as a small network. But I can't see Americans going back to CNN either. Not as long as they have people like Jim Acosta, Dana Bash, and all these people on there that are always biased. As soon as they open their mouth, you can see the propaganda angle they're taking on how you should think. The days of that are over. Obviously, CNN upper management has not figured that out yet because they all hate Trump. So this is glorious. Trump is going to destroy all of these. They're destroying all of this. Trump is, and he doesn't have to do anything except be conservative and not kiss their asses. Trump derangement syndrome. It's unbelievable to watch. It's just amazing. So, I'm going to cross over here at some point. Getting towards the busy time of day with traffic. Another electric car you can't hear. I'm waiting for that first lawsuit from somebody that gets hit by a car and they sue the manufacturer because they couldn't hear the car. You know that's coming. Because I walk and a lot of times I get surprised by vehicles because I don't hear them. I like being able to hear that truck. I heard it coming up behind me. I would be able to tell if it had gone up on the sidewalk and was going to hit me because the driver passed out. You can get a lot of things from car sounds when you're walking. So anyway, we are going to be wrapping this walk up shortly up ahead. I have to go to the bathroom very badly. I'm going to have to hold it, fortunately. I don't have a place to go. I realize some people can just stand off the side of the road, whip it out, and nobody cares anymore. But I'm not one of those people. I think I am going to go in the woods here. I see a couple of trees that'll hide me. Be right back. All right. I made it. Didn't do too much damage. So anyway, what I was saying is I'm going to be wrapping this walk up ahead here. And it's true, when you got to go, you got to go. I can certainly sympathize with women if they have to go. It's a lot more difficult to, you know, you got to drop your trousers and go. But anyway, my apologies. So, things are looking good. Hope you find some kind of hobbies to do, and you know, I really do want to start making some more vinyl record videos. I'd like to be able to play a record while talking about it, but YouTube's copyright stuff is too difficult to deal with, and I would have to notate whatever I played, satisfy their copyright, leave a link for people to buy it, and I really just don't feel like doing all that. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck's wrong with you? Jeez, that person was speeding. She was uncomfortably close, too close to the left side. And she saw me. She was just being incoherent, probably high. I looked back and she was swerving towards the curb. So she may have been drinking or something. She looked like she was in her mid-20s. That is why I walk with cars coming towards me, in case you were wondering. Because coming from behind me, she might have just hit me up ahead there if I was walking the other way. So that's just the way it is, folks. I know some people feel uncomfortable walking towards traffic because people look at you. Some people don't like to be looked at. But that was a perfect example of why I do that. Like, I looked at this truck when it was way up ahead, and I knew this woman was speeding. So I was ready to go off the side of the road, and if you noticed, I had walked closer to the curb, and she still came too close. So we're going 5.5 miles now. Don't know if it feels like it to you. I'm pretty used to 5.5 miles now. I remember when I first started walking, I thought I really did something special with 1.5 miles to 2 miles. Now I'm going to head back. I'm going to have me a Dr. Pepper. Diet one, of course. And going to take a nice shower. And see what unfolds. Sun is getting low in the sky. It's only about 3:30 right now. It's pretty soon it'll be dark around 4 o'clock, between 4 and 4:30. It's about what it's doing now almost. So cut across here. Rush hour almost. I don't like walking during rush hour. Too many people are in a hurry, and especially this time of day with the sun getting low, you get the glare of the sun blinding people. In fact, one of the worst accidents I saw not far from here was this woman who was under the influence of opioids. There was a garbage truck stopped at a red light, and don't know if she just forgot there was an intersection there or she was stoned, whatever. She drove right into the back of that garbage truck at about 40 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and she was killed, and one of the kids in the car was killed and the other one wasn't. You know, and it's really sad and tragic that that stuff happens, but they had a lot to do with the glare of the sun up ahead, and they couldn't see, and they were under the influence, and both of those together did not work well. But that was terrible. So anyway, well, pass these happy dogs down here and then I'll sign off. They're already running back and forth, having fun. They'll start barking at me in a second. They're just running back and forth, having fun. Somebody's coming, somebody's coming. I'm excited, I'm excited. Look, look, look. Somebody's coming, somebody's coming. Oh boy, oh boy. Here they go. Now they're gonna bark. Oh, somebody's coming. They know if they bark too much, they'll get brought in the house. Hi boys, hi. How you doing? If they bark too much, they'll bring them in the house. So it's like they're trying to muffle their bark so they don't have to go in the house, but oh, too late, they're in the house. See, they went all barky, she opened the door, and now they're in the house, so it's like the dogs didn't learn. Anyway, thank you very much for walking with me today. Hope you enjoyed it. A lot less windy today, a lot more tolerable. And click like and subscribe, share the content, and we will see you on the next walk. So I hope you enjoyed it, and remember, this is just an almost daily walking vlog. Opinions are my own, and they're not always right. See you on the next walk, friends. Thanks for coming with me and walking. Bye-bye, everybody.